Today, we are witnessing a fascinating shift on the world stage. A group of powerful nations has come together, and they call themselves BRICS. This isn't just another international club, it represents a significant portion of the world's population and economic might. The name itself is an acronym, a puzzle made of the first letters of its founding members: Brazil, Russia, India, China. These four countries, spanning continents and cultures, saw a common interest in joining forces to have a bigger voice in global affairs. They were later joined by South Africa, adding an important African dimension to the alliance and turning BRIC into BRICS. Together, they represent a new center of gravity in the world. The story of BRICS began as an idea in the early 2000s, not from politicians, but from an economist who saw the incredible growth potential in these emerging markets. Over time, this idea evolved into a formal political and economic partnership. The leaders of these nations began meeting annually, discussing everything from trade, investment, security, development. Their goal was simple yet ambitious: to create a more balanced world order, one where decisions were not solely dominated by the United States and its Western allies. More recently, the BRICS family has grown even larger, a clear sign of its increasing appeal and influence. In a historic expansion, several new countries were invited to join the bloc: Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran. United Arab Emirates have become full members, with others like Saudi Arabia showing strong interest. This expansion significantly boosts the group's economic and strategic weight. It brings together major oil producers, key maritime trading hubs, and large, dynamic populations. This larger, more diverse BRICS is no longer just a concept. It is a formidable coalition that represents over 45% of the world's population and a substantial share of global economic output. The formation and expansion of this group is a direct response to a world order that has been in place since the end of World War II. For decades, global institutions like the World Bank, International Monetary Fund, have been led by the United States and Europe. The BRICS nations argue that this structure no longer reflects the economic realities of the 21st century. They feel their growing economies and populations should grant them a more significant role in making global decisions. By banding together, they aim to build their own institutions, like the new Development Bank, and create alternative systems that challenge the existing framework, offering a different path for global development and cooperation. At the heart of the BRICS agenda is a truly revolutionary idea: the creation of a new, common currency. Imagine a single form of money that could be used for trade between Brazil, Russia, India, China, and all the other member nations. This is not just a financial experiment, it is a profound political statement. The goal is to create an alternative to the US dollar, which has dominated international trade for nearly a century. The BRICS leaders have been discussing this possibility with increasing seriousness at their annual summits. They believe that relying so heavily on the currency of one single nation, the United States, creates risks and imbalances for the rest of the world and puts their economies at a disadvantage. The concept is to develop a new currency that could be used to settle payments for goods and services traded among the member countries. For example, if Brazil buys oil from Saudi Arabia, instead of paying in US dollars, they could use this new BRICS currency. This process is often called de-dollarization, and it is a central pillar of the BRICS strategy to gain more economic independence. The currency might be a digital currency, backed by a basket of commodities like gold, oil, and other natural resources that the BRICS nations produce in abundance. This would, in theory, make the currency stable and attractive, tied to real, tangible assets rather than the policies of a single country. Creating such a currency is an incredibly complex undertaking. It requires immense trust and coordination among member nations, each with its own economic priorities and challenges. They would need to agree on the currency's value, how it would be managed, and which central bank would oversee its creation and circulation. Would it be a digital currency on a blockchain, or would it have a physical form? How would they ensure its stability against fluctuations in the market? These are the difficult questions that BRICS financial experts and ministers are currently wrestling with. Despite these hurdles, the political will to move forward appears strong, driven by a shared desire to reduce their collective vulnerability to American economic policy. The motivation behind this ambitious project is clear. The BRICS nations feel that the current dollar-centric system gives the United States an exorbitant privilege. Because the world needs dollars for trade, Washington can print money to finance its deficits, and wield powerful economic sanctions by cutting off a country's access to the dollar system. This gives the US immense geopolitical leverage. By creating their own currency, the BRICS countries hope to build a parallel financial system insulated from American political pressure. It is a bold move to level the playing field, creating a multipolar world where economic power is more evenly distributed among different global players. To understand why a BRICS currency is such a big deal, we must first appreciate the immense power of the US dollar. The dollar is not just America's money, it is the world's money. It is what is known as the global reserve currency. This special status means that central banks all over the world hold vast amounts of US dollars in their reserves as a safe store of value. When countries trade with each other, even if the United States is not involved, the price is often set in dollars, and the payment is made in dollars. For instance, when Japan buys oil from the United Arab Emirates, the deal is typically priced and settled in US dollars. This dominance began after World War II, with an agreement known as the Bretton Woods system. The world's major economies decided to peg their currencies to the US dollar, which was, in turn, convertible to gold at a fixed rate. Although the gold standard was abandoned in the 1970s, the dollar's central role persisted. This was due to the size and stability of the US economy, the depth of its financial markets, and the world's trust in the US government to honor its debts. The dollar became the default currency for global business because it was stable, widely available, and accepted everywhere. This created a self-reinforcing cycle. The more the dollar was used, the more essential it became. The dollar's role as the world's premier currency provides the United States with what former French President Valéry Giscard d'Estaing called an exorbitant privilege. Because the world has a constant demand for dollars, the US can borrow money more cheaply than other countries. It can run large trade deficits, buying more from the world than it sells, without facing the same kind of currency crisis that would cripple other nations. The US essentially exports paper dollars and, in return, receives real goods and services from around the globe. This unique position allows the American government and its citizens to enjoy a higher standard of living, financed in part by the rest of the world's need for its currency. Furthermore, control over the dominant global currency gives the United States a powerful foreign policy tool. The US can impose economic sanctions on countries by restricting their access to the dollar-based global financial system. For nations like Iran, North Korea, or Russia, being cut off from the dollar system can be economically devastating, as it makes it nearly impossible for them to conduct international trade and finance. This ability to weaponize the dollar gives Washington immense leverage in geopolitical disputes. It is this combination of economic advantage and political power that makes the dollar's status so important to the US and why any challenge to it is viewed with such serious concern. The introduction of a credible BRICS currency could fundamentally alter the global economic landscape. If this new currency were to gain traction, it would directly challenge the US dollar's supremacy. The first and most immediate effect would be a decrease in the global demand for dollars. If China, if India, if Brazil, if their new partners in the Middle East begin trading oil, minerals, manufactured goods using a BRICS currency, they would no longer need to hold as many dollars in their reserves. This shift would happen gradually, but over time, it could significantly weaken the dollar's value relative to other currencies, including the new BRICS currency itself. A decline in the demand for the dollar would have tangible consequences for the American economy. The exorbitant privilege that the United States has enjoyed for decades would begin to erode. The United States government would find it more expensive to borrow money, as international investors might prefer to hold assets in the new BRICS currency. This would lead to higher interest rates for the United States government, higher interest rates for corporations, and ultimately, higher rates for American consumers on mortgages, on car loans, and on credit cards. The ability of the United States to finance its large budget and trade deficits so easily would be diminished, forcing potentially painful economic adjustments at home. Moreover, a successful BRICS currency would create a parallel financial system, one that operates outside of Washington's control. This would severely blunt the effectiveness of United States economic sanctions. Countries targeted by American sanctions could simply switch to the BRICS system to conduct their trade and access financing. This would remove one of the most powerful tools in the United States' foreign policy arsenal, reducing its ability to influence the behavior of other nations without resorting to military force. The world would become more multipolar, with economic power and influence distributed more evenly between the United States-led bloc and the BRICS-led bloc. This shift would also reshape global trade dynamics. Commodity markets, especially for energy, are currently priced almost exclusively in dollars. A BRICS currency backed by commodities could lead to the creation of a new benchmark for pricing oil, natural gas, and other raw materials. A Saudi-Russian oil deal priced in a BRICS currency, for example, would be a landmark event. This would not only reduce the world's reliance on the dollar, but also give the BRICS nations, as major producers and consumers of commodities, greater control over the pricing of these vital resources. The petrodollar system that has underpinned the dollar's dominance for 50 years would face its most serious challenge yet. American leaders, regardless of their political party, have long understood the immense strategic value of the US dollar's global dominance. Donald Trump, with his America First approach to foreign policy, is particularly attuned to any perceived threat to American power and prestige. From his perspective, the BRICS effort to create a new currency is not just an economic development, it is a direct geopolitical challenge to the United States. He and many other leaders in Washington view this as an attempt by rivals, particularly China and Russia, to undermine America's standing in the world. Protecting the dollar is therefore synonymous with protecting American strength and sovereignty. During his presidency, Trump often used America's economic might as a primary tool of foreign policy. He imposed tariffs on China and implemented sweeping sanctions against countries like Iran and Venezuela. The effectiveness of these measures relied heavily on the dollar's central role in the global financial system. The ability to cut off adversaries from dollar-denominated trade and finance is a powerful lever of influence. A viable BRICS currency would provide an escape route for these sanctioned nations, effectively neutralizing one of Trump's favorite policy tools. Therefore, any move that weakens the dollar's status is seen as a direct threat to the America First agenda. Concern over the dollar's status is not limited to Donald Trump, it is a bipartisan issue in Washington. Leaders across the political spectrum recognize that the dollar's preeminence provides the United States with significant economic and strategic benefits. They worry that a shift away from the dollar would lead to higher borrowing costs, inflation, and a diminished ability to project power globally. From this viewpoint, stopping or slowing down the BRICS currency initiative is a matter of national security. Potential United States responses could range from diplomatic pressure on BRICS members to strengthening alliances with countries that remain committed to the dollar-based system, or even using financial regulations to make it difficult for the new currency to be used. For Trump and others who share his worldview, the battle over currency is a key front in a larger great power competition. He often speaks of economic security as national security. In this context, the BRICS currency is viewed as an economic weapon aimed at the heart of American power. The rhetoric from leaders like Trump would likely frame this as an aggressive move by China and Russia to destabilize the global economy for their own gain. The response would be to rally the American people and United States allies to defend the existing financial order, portraying the dollar not just as a currency, but as a symbol of freedom, stability, and the United States-led international system that has ensured global prosperity for decades. To make this abstract currency war more concrete, let's consider a few real-world examples. Imagine Russia wants to sell a large shipment of oil to India. Currently, this transaction would almost certainly be conducted in US dollars. India would buy dollars on the foreign exchange market and transfer them to Russia. However, this process exposes both countries to United States financial oversight and potential sanctions. If a BRICS currency existed, Russia and India could bypass the dollar system entirely. India would pay Russia directly in the new currency, faster, potentially cheaper, invisible to and untouchable by the United States Treasury Department. Another powerful example lies in the world of infrastructure and development. When a developing country in Africa needs a loan to build a new port or a highway, it typically turns to the World Bank or the IMF. The loans are dispersed in dollars and often come with policy conditions set by Washington. The BRICS New Development Bank, however, could offer the same loan in the new BRICS currency. This would give the African nation an alternative source of financing, free from the policy strings it might find objectionable. It's a choice between two systems, and the competition would force both sides to offer more attractive terms. Consider the impact on everyday trade. A Brazilian coffee exporter selling beans to a Chinese cafe chain. They would have to navigate converting Brazilian reais to US dollars, and then Chinese yuan. This process involves currency conversion fees and exposure to exchange rate fluctuations. If both could use a stable BRICS digital currency, the transaction would be as simple as a direct digital transfer. This efficiency could boost trade among the BRICS nations, creating a more integrated economic bloc. Small and medium-sized businesses in particular would benefit from reduced complexity and reduced cost, strengthening economic ties within the group. Finally, think about a global financial crisis. During uncertainty, investors traditionally rush to the safety of the US dollar, causing its value to soar and creating problems for other economies. If a credible BRICS currency, backed by a basket of real assets like gold and oil were available, it could serve as an alternative safe haven. Investors might diversify between the dollar and the BRICS currency. This would reduce global financial volatility and prevent the United States from being the sole beneficiary of global panics. It would introduce stability and choice into a system long tilted toward the dollar. In conclusion, the discussion surrounding a potential BRICS common currency is far more than a technical debate among economists. It is a central plot point in the unfolding story of 21st century geopolitics. The BRICS alliance, now larger and more ambitious than ever, represents a collective of nations determined to carve out a more significant role for themselves on the world stage. Their plan for a new currency is the most direct challenge yet to the post-World War II economic order, an order that has been built upon the foundation of the US dollar. This is not just about finance, it is about power, influence, and the future shape of our global system. The US dollar's reign as the world's undisputed reserve currency has provided the United States with unparalleled economic and political advantages. This exorbitant privilege has allowed America to finance its economy and project its power in ways no other country can. A successful BRICS currency would threaten to dismantle this privilege, creating a multipolar monetary world. For American leaders like Donald Trump, who prioritized national strength and economic dominance, this challenge is viewed as a direct threat to United States interests. The defense of the dollar is therefore seen as a critical component of maintaining America's leading role in the world. The potential effects of this currency shift are profound. It could reshape global trade, it could diminish the power of United States sanctions, it could alter the balance of power between the United States and the rising economies of the BRICS nations. Real-world scenarios, oil sales between Russia and India, development loans in Africa, illustrate how a parallel financial system could operate outside of Washington's reach. This is not a distant theoretical possibility. The building blocks for this new system are being put into place right now, driven by a shared desire among BRICS members for greater economic sovereignty. As we look to the future, the currency war between the established dollar and the aspiring BRICS currency will be a key dynamic to watch. The path forward is fraught with immense challenges for the BRICS nations, and the United States will certainly not stand by passively as its financial dominance is eroded. Whether this leads to a more balanced and stable global system or a more fragmented and confrontational one remains to be seen. What is clear, however, is that the world is changing. The rise of BRICS and its quest for a new currency signal the end of the unipolar moment and the beginning of a new, more complex and contested chapter in global history.